The ICG is a community of independent market researchers who collaborate, share knowledge and experience to deliver value to fellow members and to clients. If you're an independent researcher and want to connect with over 400 like-minded people, gain access to our knowledge base, get inspiration, support and advice from other members, then why don't you join us? Either visit our website, theicg.co.uk/join, or email us at membership@theicg.co.uk. If you're a client company and want to connect with the largest resource of expert independent researchers in the world, with proven expertise across all markets, categories and techniques, then why don't you contact us? Either visit our website, theicg.co.uk/connect, or email us, connect@theicg.co.uk. If you're a supplier and want to promote yourself to over 400 buyers of research services, then why don't you contact us? Either visit our website, theicg.co.uk/advertise, or email us at admin@theicg.co.uk. The ICG, Expert Independent Researchers. This webinar is kindly sponsored by Critical Research. Last year, Critical Research celebrated 25 years in the business, conducting both field and tabs plus full service. As an organisation, they work in partnership with their clients. They're not departmentalised. This means that if you need something doing, it's done. You don't need to wait for a message to filter through to DP or another department. Their directors and executives handle all aspects of their projects. In 2015, they bought RSM, who were based in London Bridge. This added a fully international telephone research element to their UK telephone call centres. And finally, they consider themselves nice people, or at least that's what their clients say. And they are very happy to be sponsoring this webinar.
Hello, it's good to be talking to you here today. I'm Dan from Shed Research. I set up Shed Research 6 years ago, largely to help organisations make more of their existing research. Thank you to Arthur and the ICG for hosting the event here today. This project that I'm about to take you through was how we helped Bristol City Council launch a new company, a new energy company. Fundamentally, it's about how to successfully unite the public and the private sector. The public sector, so people working for the common good, driven by a social purpose, giving back to society. Nurses, doctors, firefighters, teachers, people doing good work to take care of their community. Or if you're Midge this week, maybe your experience hasn't quite been so positive. The private sector, driven by different things, driven ultimately by money, looking for opportunities, responding to the needs of different types of consumer, giving people things that they want to make their lives better. There's good and bad within the private sector, what Ed Miliband spoke about, the producers and the predators. But what happens when you combine these two potentially conflicting worlds, the profit motive of business with the responsibilities of public service? So some great things can happen. Some of the work that's been done on fighting cybercrime with the police, security services and government agencies all working together with blue chips like IBM and the banks, that's had some really positive benefits for society. There are some, and probably quite a few, less positive examples. G4S at the Olympics and the security debacle, there's quite an obvious example. And at its most extreme, when you see people from the business world decide to take on a public service role, you can even get this. But all of these are examples of the private sector stepping into the public sphere. What about the other way around? What about the public sector getting involved in the private sector? This was the challenge here. How do we successfully unite the public and private sector when it's the public sector entering the private? The brief was to help Bristol City Council set up the first municipal energy company in the UK for 40 years. It's actually how energy used to be, small regional generation. It's quite a tried and tested model in Germany and Scandinavia already. For a number of reasons, it just felt like the right time to be doing this. Bristol was the European Green Capital in 2015, so lots of green energy generation going on around the city. There was the political will. They had their own red-trousered mayor. He was very buccaneering, and he saw a real potential to be an innovative, forward-thinking council and to really lead the way. There's also a need. Actually, the big irony in the energy market is that those who can least afford to pay the most for energy do pay the most. So those on prepayment meters, the smallest of businesses, the people who don't tend to shop around. And there's the other need, is actually the reductions in council budgets. So while wanting to provide the same services, they have less money. So Bristol City Council saw a huge opportunity to bring all of these things together to provide lower cost energy to the people that need it most, to generate a profit, to put back into local services, and also to put Bristol on the map as a forward-thinking, pioneering, buccaneering local government. So our brief was pretty huge, actually. One of the biggest things we had to look at was the potential size of the market for this new company. How many customers could it expect to generate? Where would they be? What types of customers? When we know the types of customers, where do they get their energy at the moment? What do they value? What might encourage them to switch? Why don't they switch at the moment? What would keep them with the same company over the long term? And then to Bristol Energy itself, and that was to be its name, how could this new model of energy company differentiate itself from the rest of the market? How would it explain the fact that it's owned ultimately by the council? And then they had lots of ideas, lots of different tariffs and products to test. So what did people think of these target segments? What did they think would be the appeal of these in the market? So lots of challenges here. And one's the perennial challenge, I suppose. We didn't have much time. The budget that we were working towards was publicly accountable council funds, so we need to be as resourceful as possible, while at the same time being robust. So this needed to be passing a PwC audit. It had to be approved by the council cabinet. So the way to do this, we thought, was actually to make the most of existing research. There's a huge amount in the energy market already, big reports by Ofgem, CMA, GfK. So we really drilled into those to more cost effectively and more quickly pull out the key findings around barriers to switching, triggers to switching, those sorts of things. We spent our primary research budget on qualitative and quantitative research, looking at the brand, looking at the size of the market, looking at testing the product. And this is where I got some help very ably from fellow ICG Simon Riley. So if you're listening, Simon, thank you for your help on this project. Second challenge was reaching the hard to reach. So lots of the people that Bristol Energy wanted to reach were vulnerable households. So people on very low income, tending to be social housing tenants. We know from our other work in this area that actually it's best to speak to these groups in an environment that they're familiar with, where they're most comfortable. So rather than try to free find them through the usual recruitment channels or use recruiter lists, we actually travelled to local community groups like unemployment support workshops, drop-in centres, those sorts of things, and then we snowballed. We met our quota of debt just by snowboarding within the community. Third challenge, really getting beyond the obvious. So we do a lot of work in the energy sector, and what always comes up is that price is the primary reason why people switch. But actually very few in the market do switch, and apathy rules. People tend to stay with the same big six energy providers. So our experience meant we could move quickly beyond this argument, again, making the most of the available budget. Let's move quickly to what could differentiate Bristol Energy. What are the levers that we can pull to persuade people to come to a new type of energy company? And that meant really in the discussion groups and in the depths, actually parking the price question, dealing with that upfront, having those questions, and then moving on very, very quickly. Fourth challenge, probably the biggest challenge, was sizing the market. So it wasn't enough for me to go back and say X% of potential customers would switch to Bristol Energy. That wouldn't be enough for the business case. So we needed a robust way of calculating absolute customer numbers. So we developed quite a complicated model, looking at the number of people that do switch in the market, the number of people that switch to new entrants in the market based on the information that we had. Factored in and weighted in some local knowledge, so we knew some things about the local energy market that may help or hinder Bristol Energy. The final calculation is incredibly commercially sensitive, as you can imagine. So I can't reveal that here today, but it was used in the business case to calculate potential future revenue and profit for the business. So our feedback to Bristol City Council, suffice to say that there was appeal for the idea, and especially around Bristol and in that region. But it did need to play by the rules of the industry. So council ownership was a concern. The council didn't have the best reputation for delivering public services. So to step into the private sphere, it needs to really prove itself. So actually playing by the rules of the big six could be advantageous to Bristol Energy. Localism, huge draw as well. There's a lot of pride about Bristol, just voted the best city to live in the UK. And particularly pride in its local history. So Bristol Energy really needs to tap into this in the brand that it became. And also it needs segment to succeed. So looking at its core market, if we're looking at people on prepayment meters or smaller businesses, there isn't one strategy to reach those two, and then the mass market as well. So they need different approaches for different groups, and we gave them very clear strategies to approach each. So the research played a key role in the business case, and I even wrote some of that. I passed the PwC audit, although after the Oscars debacle, I'm not sure I'm that proud of admitting that. The council cabinet approved the business case as well. Our client was delighted, as you can see, and personally it was hugely satisfying to see something that you believe in actually be delivered to market from that initial idea. So Bristol Energy, so the company launched fully in February last year. It's just launched its first green tariff. It's now got tens of thousands of customers. It employs over 100 people. It's a real force for social good. It's supporting local renewables. And in the future, it will be investing that money back into the local community. I continue to be involved with the company, running their brand and their product research. And I think it's such a good model. It's been looked at closely by other councils, most notably Nottingham have launched Robin Hood Energy. And I think this municipal model may well spread to other sectors, and the time maybe feels right for local communities to take charge of sectors that aren't necessarily working for them. So why not have local municipal banks, municipal broadband, Wi-Fi, those sorts of things. So I think we'll see more of this public-private marriage in the future, and I think that could be a real force for good. So thank you for listening today. It may have been said, but this session was pre-recorded. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the slot on Thursday. So if you have any questions, my details are there, or please direct them to Arthur. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about a project where we tested some advertising. Now, I find that it's a real problem doing creative development on advertising, because you have to get something which looks a little bit like the final product, which is a lot of work. On the other hand, just ideas are very difficult to test. What we did with this one, in collaboration with Discovery Research, was to have a couple of narrative tapes for some TV ads, which was for Boots' Christmas ad, and get the respondents to listen to those. Now, I think the important thing is with this is two things, really. One is that we were observing people listening, so they don't have to give a rational account as they're listening or speak or say anything. The other thing is we're actually capturing the responses of the System 1 non-conscious brain. Now, the System 1 non-conscious brain, apart from operating very quickly, doesn't depend on an irrational setting. So it doesn't matter if what you're presenting is a complete ad or looks right or so on. The non-conscious brain just responds to the stimuli that it gets. So on the basis of that, what we wanted to do was to use these two tapes and look at people listening to them. Now, that's the first big challenge, because what we do normally is look at people looking at an ad or looking at a logo or whatever it is. So this was new for us. This was a challenge. We didn't actually, to be honest, know how well it would work. It was part of a general, quite large qualitative project. So of course people discussed the two narrative tapes. The narrative tapes were produced by the ad agency, and I'm going to bravely, because I'm not sure if the video is going to work, show you a video at the moment of some of the results.
The theme is Glamorous Christmas, and all the women are wearing bright red lipstick and glittery shoes. Columns of number 7 boxes with ribbons tied around them sit in towers. The women are cheerfully and excitedly chatting whilst closing the lids on shimmering number 7 boxes. Another group of happy helpers are playfully testing number 7 crackers, and they let off a series of bangs.
You saw there one of the narrative tapes, and then you saw each word being highlighted as it went along. What we were trying to do here is, when a word came up which people responded to, they liked it, or a phrase, a description, then you would see that in the face. I've just put up here 12 signs of engagement, which is taken from a video which I have on YouTube. Now, some of these, quite a few of these, are about the gaze at an object or at a TV ad or whatever. For this project, we had to forget about that. We had to just try and get people just to sit, look into space, and then we're looking for other signs that they're engaging. Basically, often we're looking for signs of movement, something which energizes people, or if it's a negative, would get, as you saw there, perhaps a frown or some change in the mouth or in the eyebrows. So what we were doing is looking for signs as people listened to the tapes. What we found from the project was, yes, it is possible to pick up these signs of pleasure and displeasure from listeners as well as viewers. It's a lot more difficult. I'm not going to pretend that it was easy to do, because if you're just asking a respondent just to sit in a room, there's loads of distractions, and it's difficult just to sit and not listen and not be distracted by things. But in fact, we did see a pattern. You can see those scenes or words which get a positive response. You can also see the ones which don't. So in the end, we had 2 different narrative tapes, and we were able to distinguish between one and the other in the pattern of responses. Now, what's the learning from this? I'm rattling through quickly because I don't want to take up too much of your time, and hopefully there'll be some questions later. We can do it from listeners as well as viewers, and I think this has got a lot of potential for ad agencies testing ads, because you can make a narrative tape and you can just get people to respond to the descriptions you have, or the words that you use, the concepts. You know, is this something that immediately shows a response from the non-conscious brain? There are some problems with it, however. I mean, one of the key things when we're looking at people watching ads or looking at a logo or a magazine ad or whatever it is the gaze. If there's pleasure, people will often open the eyes a bit more to get it, or if people are concentrating or puzzled, then obviously you see a narrowing of the eyes. So we're missing the gaze from it. So that's quite a big minus in terms of the using this for listening only. One of the big problems with this is that the ad agency were a little bit too enthusiastic in terms of what they turned out. I think it was a professional actor they got to read it, but the tapes came in as 4 minutes and even over 4 minutes, which is a hell of a long time to get someone just to sit and just look into middle distance in a room. So that was one of the problems with this. If we were talking about what I would do in the future, then I would have a visual for people to look at, and some audio for them to listen to. If you take those two together, then you can see when people concentrate on an aspect or when they don't, and you can see whether they are having a negative or a positive response. So that's what I would say for my recommendation for future research. Just to summarise, the research did work well, and you can tell it worked well because amongst the respondents there is definitely a pattern of responses. I can't talk about the actual, they wanted to keep it confidential, so I can't talk about the actual scenes, but basically they had two ideas about a scenario where a father and child, or mother and child, that was one of the things we tested, were looking into this magical world. And basically what this comes back to is saying, yes, respondents have imagination. No, we don't need to be literal about these things. They can use their imagination. They can present it with concepts or unworked out executions and respond to those. So the big benefit for the ad agency is that you can just throw in some ideas to test, and you can pick up the response from the non-conscious brain, the system 1 brain, and you don't have to get people to move into the kind of marketing manqué mode where they put on their marketer's hat and decide they're going to evaluate it in some way. We're looking for emotions, and that's what we look for in this. Not for people to critique the two different narrative tapes. We wanted to get their emotions to create an ad which has got emotional power. I haven't been looking at this very carefully, but I don't want to bore you with any additional bullet points and so on. So hopefully you'll have a few questions at the end of this session. So I'll just say now, I'll and hope, fingers crossed, that the video worked. I'll hand over to you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur, and good morning, everyone. I'm Stuart Green from the research. Hopefully you now see me on screen. I'm the good-looking one with my colleague Sam alongside me there, looking very proud with our nomination for the Independence Day Award. We were shortlisted for work with two clients, and I'm going to just briefly tell you a little bit about the two projects that we did that we were shortlisted for. So the first one was for a caterer at a large exhibition venue, and they came to us about just over a year ago, and they were wanting to understand a lot more about how people choose from what is a very wide range of food and drink options on offer within the venue. And they had this sort of overall headline view of what it was they wanted to get out of the research. But the marketing manager who we were working with needed and had some ideas about how they might go about it, but needed quite a lot of help from us in terms of selling it into the business and guidance on how the project itself would work, but more importantly on the benefits it would bring. And we, right from the very beginning, we were very clear and made sure that we tied all of the project objectives directly into their KPIs, and that was really important to make sure that we were really aligned with their business KPIs, and that really helped them when they were talking to senior management about it. So what did we actually do? We did a series of things. We did some journey tracking, we did some accompanied shops or accompanied visits, we did some quite a lot of observation, and we did some intercept interviews. The journey tracking, we used the CrowdLab app, and we recruited people before they were coming to a show, got them to give their views the evening before, what they were expecting, what they were thinking might happen there, specifically in relation to the food and drink offer. Then as they were arriving in the morning, throughout the day they logged when they bought something, when they had something to eat or drink, even when they were just thinking about something. So if they walked past somewhere and thought, oh, that looks nice, maybe I'll pop back there later, we got them to log that. And then at the end of the day, We got them to think back over the day and what had happened there. And what was really interesting, this journey tracking was really valuable to us, because it turned out that people, before they came along, said, yeah, this is what's going to be important to me, this is what I'm going to be looking for. And at the end of the day, when they looked back, they sort of said, yeah, that was what it was all about for me. It was all about this one thing. Actually, at the time of choosing the food and drink, they reported something quite different, and it was actually a very different motivation and a very different reason behind their choice. I can't tell you what the difference was, unfortunately, but if we'd have just done a sort of post-event survey and got people to report back, we'd have completely missed that. So that was really crucial in this research. And what else did we do? We did some accompanied shops. So we met up with people and walked through, following their natural trail through the venue. We did a lot of observation, following people around, watching them, seeing what they were doing, and also some, as part of that, sometimes just chatting to people. So, you know, I saw you looking at that sign and you were looking a bit confused, and then you walked off over that way instead of going into this particular food outlet. What was happening there? So just talking to people in that setting, and also some short quant interviews as well, some little survey intercepts as well. And what was really important in all of this was that Sam and I were absolutely hands-on in all aspects of the project. So we were the ones who were recruiting people for the journey tracking. We were the people who were doing the quant intercepts. We were doing all of the observation and following people around. It meant that we didn't miss anything. We absolutely knew what was going on. So then the question is, well, how do you then make these insights stick? And we knew we were presenting to the senior team at the venue, not just the catering people, but the whole venue team. And what we did was we met with them out in the car park, and we said, let's walk in your visitors' shoes. Let's start here. Let's tell you about what people are expecting, what their preconceptions might be, and then let's move through the process. And we ended up then at the end of this journey in one of the catering venues. They're surrounded by all of that stimulus and able to sort of really bring that to life. And of course, what we did as we walked in between different sections, you know, so we maybe talked for 5 minutes about one particular aspect, and as we were walking to the next bit, we were able to talk to the attendees and just see where they were up to with it, how they were feeling about it, and keep engaging people throughout that time. We also then when we got to the final bit, we had some really targeted videos to help get across very specific points, and then we had a leave behind, a really high quality booklet that we left behind. And interestingly, we saw the client last week, and she was saying she was in a meeting just the day before, and someone there had this booklet with them. This is a year ago that we did this work, and they were still taking the booklet to meetings, so it was still there. And that booklet had a lot of sort of infographic style things in it to really help just make it a user-friendly piece of material. So that's the first bit of work. The second one was for Sport Birmingham. They're the County Sports Partnership for the City of Birmingham, and they work in that area to help promote physical activity. And they were wanting to understand a lot more about motivations for and barriers to physical activity among local residents. And this was coming from the angle of the workforce, and workforce, not just paid workforce, but also volunteers. Volunteers play a really important part within sports and physical activity. And they were wanting to get that really clear understanding of how the workforce could help residents to get across the barriers and to become more active. So we worked with them to develop a really cost-effective research program. We spoke with residents and also with the workforce, a mix of sort of focus groups, attending sessions, talking to people in the, you know, sort of quite informal ways, quantitative survey, depth interviews with the workforce as well. And then in terms of the outputs of it all, obviously there were a huge number of stakeholders with this work. So some of the national governing bodies for sport, Sport England, Birmingham City Council, and many others as well. So what we did, we ran an interactive workshop which included some role play, which they played along with very well. Not always suitable for all audiences, but that worked really well in this sense. It helped them to really get to grips and get their mindset into the mindset of some of the residents. We used very memorable headlines. We found that this works really well for sort of recommendations, for insights. Actually just giving things a really clear, concise, but also memorable headline helps people to engage with it and to remember it in the long term. And also some really well-edited dynamic videos, and then a reference document for them to take on to use as they presented on to other people. So that's a very brief whistle-stop tour of the couple of projects we were involved in. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can ask them today on via the webinar system, or just feel free to drop me a line with any questions. So thank you for listening, and back to you, Arthur.
Hi, I'm Amanda Anderton. I'm one of the co-founders at Hope and Anchor. We are a small senior team of qualitative researchers based in the heart of East London's creative community. We entered our project carried out for Time Inc. into the ICG's Independence Day Award in 2016. Now for us, this is a great example of how staying true to the values of being a micro agency, but also a startup, keeps us thinking big. It keeps us coming up with mould-breaking approaches, and it also led to award-winning work for Britain's leading publishing giant. In this project, we used a blend of solid qual and quant methods with our own groundbreaking creative approaches. Our debrief wowed a really tough audience of chiefs of sales, editorial and marketing with its strong visual and editorial style. And this is our story. When the Time Inc. Time for Tech brief dropped in the Hope and Anchor inbox, it created quite a flurry of excitement. As a small startup, every brief really counts, whether it's big or small. So getting the opportunity to pitch for a prestigious piece of work for a huge brand like Time Inc. could really transform the destiny of a fledgling brand like ours. And the brief posed a sizable challenge: how to use consumer insight to grow Time Inc.'s ad revenue from technology brands and build their profile as an expert and thought leader in the tech sector. Time Inc. laid out a clear set of consumer insight needs. They wanted us to map out the technology consumer purchase journey across different product verticals and identify the role of magazine media in this journey. They also wanted us to unearth consumer needs from technology and tell them how brands and advertisers can tap into them now and in the future. You see, magazine media has very low awareness in the tech category, so to get standout, Time Inc. needed the research to take centre stage at a series of launch events across the globe. The events would act as a launch pad for commercial opportunities for Time Inc.'s sales team to help them break into the tech industry. And beyond all of this, the research needed application across the rest of the business, so from editorial to marketing to publishing and distribution. Now, we knew that we would have really tough competition for such a great project and that tackling it would be no mean feat. We needed a plan that demonstrated how working with a small team like ours would deliver the mighty tools needed to crack these tech titans. And we threw our heart and soul into winning the work, and it paid off. Our USP as an agency is the suite of innovative research tools we've developed, often inspired by popular TV formats, social media trends, and new technologies. These unique tools help us to dial up consumer engagement in our process. They also help us reveal deeper insights, and they produce captivating outputs. The Time for Tech research is a best practice example of our approach. It expertly blends solid qual and quant methodologies with our own groundbreaking techniques. Here's what we did. So tech hauls. Inspired by the YouTube haul phenomena where consumers share vlogs of their product collections and purchases, we asked our consumers to send us videoed tech hauls. They showed us their technology, they explained their likes and dislikes, they discussed its role, and they talked to us about how they felt that their existing purchases could be improved. We also did tech purchase digital diaries, so using a bespoke app that meant that our consumers could capture their lives for us in real time. They recorded each step of their technology purchase journeys over a period of time. They uploaded Instagram-style text, videos, photos, and voice recording that took us into each decision-making moment with them. We also conducted in-home deep dives where we visited our consumers in home to discuss their relationships with technology in more depth. We talked through their purchase journeys and their needs and expectations from the future of technology. We also conducted in-store tech takeovers where we took teams of consumers to tech stores across the country, and in a supermarket sweep style, we gave them a mission to browse the store, gathering as much information as possible about all the leading edge products and innovations they were interested in. The team who gathered the most information won a prize, new technology, of course. We also conducted structured reality filming. This is a bespoke technique of ours that involves consumers reenacting their purchase behaviour on film with a camera crew present. The technique borrows from structured reality techniques on TV shows like Tower You're Made in Chelsea. And whilst this produces fantastic, succinct, high-quality video that brings to life tech purchase journeys, it also produces fresh insights as consumers reveal deeper needs and situations when put into the structured reality situation. We also conducted a fly-on-the-wall smart home day. So to transport our consumers into the future, we placed them in a smart home for the day, Big Brother style. The smart home was equipped with futuristic technology that our consumers had never seen before. We filmed them living in the house, interacting with the technology, and then we went in to investigate in person what excited them and met their untapped needs. And finally, we validated the tech need states and consumer touch points that we'd uncovered with our range of qualitative techniques with an online survey with a NatRep sample. We quantified the influence of key timing titles across the consumer journey and also across timing's audiences. So the outputs gave Time Inc. a really rich repository of consumer insight. We gave them a set of 12 validated need states for technology and a detailed understanding of how they span different product verticals and key brands for Time Inc. We also supported this with compelling video evidence from our smart home day, showing how untapped needs could be met in the future. Now, ironically, this slide was a beautiful film that we shot of our smart home, and you can see one of the stills from it there. We can't show it today due to technology letting us down in this situation, but if anybody is really interested in seeing it, please do get in touch and we can show you a copy through our Vimeo. We also gave Time Inc. proprietary insight into the tech consumer journey by mapping out a detailed framework of how magazine media can influence decision making. And again, we supported this with rich video demonstrations of that consumer decision making in action. So our outputs were really visually rich, multimedia story of the relationship consumers have with technology, both now but also in the future. And when we delivered our debrief, we mirrored the editorial style of magazine media, so we used big, bold headlines, rich narratives and vibrant storytelling. And we very much put consumers centre stage through the video. We created high quality video that communicated insights and unequivocally supported our strategic recommendations. And our story ends there. The research, we turned our research into a toolkit for Time Inc. and us to take on the road and grab the attention of the tech sector. We shared the research at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. This was followed up by a series of launch events that we held at the Central London Smart Home we used for the research and was attended by the likes of Bosch, Siemens, Sony, Samsung and LG. And from this, Time Inc. landed over 50 face-to-face meetings. The sales guys told us that they found the mix of big data and rich consumer stories really powerful armory for promoting magazine media and discussing the future advertising opportunities. You know, and it really repositioned as Time Inc. as a go-to media owner for technology brands and their agencies. The research successfully broke down those previous barriers and demonstrated the relevance of their brands to the tech category. Additionally, the research also directly drove new content and product development, including a bespoke editorial guide to buying technology and the development of livesmart.co.uk, which is the UK's very first lifestyle site dedicated to smart tech. The research also generated tons of publicity. We had coverage on Research Live, in Publishing, Mediatel, Mobile Marketing and Talking New Media. And this project won Time Inc. a FIP award. And of course, it also won us the inaugural ICG Independence Day award. So that's it from me, and I'll hand you back over to Arthur.
Hi, thanks very much indeed, Amanda. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring back all of our presenters. Just going to bring back John and Stuart. So hopefully, John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Stuart?
Yes.
Okay, right. Well, we've got four of us now, so this is going to be fun. Let's see how this goes. We've got about sort of 10 minutes or so for some questions. Now, Amanda, that area that you created to do your research in, did you create that from scratch? Was that an existing facility? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, we didn't create it from scratch. It's actually an existing smart home off the back of Oxford Street, which my colleague Darren spent quite some time researching and finding. It's an amazing space. It's really futuristic, and it's fully decked out from everything from the kitchen to the bedroom to the bathroom to the lounge areas. So our consumers could literally live in it for the day and really feel like they were at home. And our camera crew could kind of go in
and how long did respondents spend in the place then?
They arrived first thing in the morning, so it was like a normal day. Had the full day there from breakfast onwards right through to bedtime, and we went in kind of towards the end of the day to start sort of chatting to them about what they'd experienced through their futuristic life.
Wow, no, that's cool, really innovative, really innovative. Okay, we have some questions. So, John, first of all, I've got a question here from Keith Hewitt, who asks, what is your view on automated facial coding systems? And I'd like to add something to that, because when you look at, I remember that wonderful American TV program Lie to Me with Tim Roth, and that was all about, micro expressions and all of those sorts of things. So I suppose the question is, and this is linked on to Keith's, to what extent is there subjectivity in your evaluation of what's going on someone's face? What's the chances of you getting it wrong? And I suppose that leads into the automated side. So give us a bit of a view on that.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you raised that issue, because actually I'm struggling at the moment with the description facial coding, because it's not just facial coding that we do; it's the whole body, if you like. Now it's non-verbal communication, which I much prefer, which I'm moving to. I'm rather bedeviled by this facial code, the automated facial coding, because it's become very common because it's easy to do. You can do it very cheaply, and some big names are involved in it, including Millward Brown. Problem with it is it's pretty crude. I mean, I've seen examples of what they produce, and as you can imagine, if you're just looking at a face with no context, well, the computer's looking at a face, the algorithm is, with no context, trying to identify expressions, it's very difficult. So I think what happens with the automated facial coding is that what you get is responses to very broad emotions. And it's no accident that they like to use humorous ads, because you can pick up smiles, and you can also pick up frowns. I mean, what we do, and I'll come on to the subjectivity bit, is look at the whole body and look at the face, take the context into account, and pick up mixed emotions if necessary. I mean, basically, we've got 10 emotions that we use for looking at ads. And I think they're all very well validated. I mean, I've got a couple of ebooks and an app, which is 55 subtle expressions of emotion. But at the end, it comes down to the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And we as human beings tend to, either we don't see an emotion because some people don't read faces or body language very well, or we do. And if we do, 99% of the time we agree. So it's very rare that I would find a client or anyone who disagrees if I say someone looks unhappy or whatever it happens to be, or if there's a look of recognition or a more subtle expression. So basically, it's a natural human ability that we all have, or most of us have. So it's a language that we can speak. And if I were to show a client 10 responses to an ad, you know, they would say yes. If that person really responds well and there's pleasure, they'll see that pleasure if they can. So it is subjective, but it's also, there's a lot of intersubjective agreement, if you like.
But how precise though can you be? Because we can all recognise happy, sad. We can all recognise probably frustrated, bored. But in terms of it providing real value, I mean, how precise can you get?
Well, I mean, if you take the 10 emotions that we base our work on, I think pleasure, humour, I won't run through them all. It is pretty precise. Sometimes you might get a mix. You're not quite sure what it is. But one of the key it's not really an emotion, a category that we use for when you're looking at ads, and we did this from looking at you know, ads for NSPCC or sad ads, or you know, not necessarily either humour or unhappiness. Then active engagement is the category that we use, and basically that's when something grabs someone, so their body is energized. So you might move towards it, you might move your head around, your body would move in some way, and it's actually, if you think about it, almost impossible to see something with pleasure and your body not respond in some way. Now, if you want to say, well, what are the signs of active engagement? Well, you can set them out if you like, but basically it's something that we can all recognise.
Okay, thank you, John. Stuart, I've got a few questions for you. The first one is, this is also from Keith Hewitt, who says, did you do your own infographics or use an external agency? I don't think it's anything to do with your work at all, but so are you the proud owner of your own infographics talent, or did you use someone else?
We did it ourselves, actually, and but using a lot of inspiration from elsewhere. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Not many original thoughts. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, there you are, Keith. Just go and borrow from someone else, I think is probably the answer.
Yeah.
Now, I was interested particularly in the catering example that you gave, because I was trying to understand, because we've all been to exhibitions and conferences and so on, and we always seem to end up with the same thing. It's always really disappointing and it's expensive. Having a caterer to ask you to look into something, to review their offering is quite refreshing, I think. But I was interested in the aspect of persuading people that you would be doing a bit of following around as they were doing their thing at the event. But your interest, of course, was much more based on what they were going to be eating. So how did you engage with people? Because you said you did it all yourselves, which is great, but how did that all work?
Well, we had a mix of things. Obviously, I mentioned about the app, which allowed people sort of do their own thing, but sort of report back throughout the day. The accompanied shops they were set up in advance. So we actually sort of, arranged with people. Obviously the exhibition venue, for depending on the show itself, was selling tickets, so they had contact details that they could sort of ask people if they were interested in taking part. But actually, the accompanied shops was a relatively small part of what we did. We spent a lot more time hanging around key places and just watching people as they approached. It's amazing what people do when they come to somewhere and they start looking at the signage, looking at the menus, just getting a bit of a glance, looking at how long the queue is, looking at different things like that, and observing the sort of the paths that people took around. Not necessarily always then talking to them about it, but as I said, sometimes then sort of following up with them just to sort of understand a bit more about it. And I think often people struggle to recognize that they've done something until you actually point it out to them. So if you say, I noticed that you came over here, but then you went back over there, and then you came back here again. What were you doing? Well, I hadn't sort of realized that I'd done that, but yeah, I suppose I did, because I'd seen this, and then I thought that looked quite interesting. And so actually being able to sort of address that to them and sort of ask them to sort of talk a little bit about it proved quite really helpful, actually.
Okay. Let's come back to Amanda. In your methodology, you had a whole range of different things that you did, tech halls and your smart house and all, lots of different things. And all of those were, well, not all of them, but I suppose many of those were quite innovative. So I was interested in one, how did you persuade the client to go down that route? Because I think we probably all are aware of clients being very conservative in their outlook, and particularly toward research, and it's very difficult to get them to switch to new things. So how did you persuade the client to go down that route? And of all the different techniques and tools that you use, which one do you think was the most insightful in terms of your in terms of the project?
Actually, we were really fortunate in this particular instance. I mean, I completely agree with you. We often kind of find ourselves being sort of seen as a bit of a wild card when it comes to methodologies, because we like to come at things differently. In this instance, because Time Inc. do a tremendous amount of research, and they wanted to do something that really stood out, something that they could market, that could grab the attention of the tech industry, they were really, really open to innovative methodologies. It was part of the brief. So it wasn't difficult to convince them to get on board with it in this instance, because they were looking for something exciting and groundbreaking. It was kind of part of what we set out to do.
So there was always going to be a sort of PR purpose to the research, was there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they needed something that was going to grab attention at all of the events they wanted to feature at, but also they wanted all of the sort of solid insight underpinning that as well for any of their follow-up sessions. But in the first instance, they had to kind of show they were doing something different. So yeah, it was fairly straightforward to get them to buy into a whole raft of really exciting things, and it was brilliant.
And then the follow-up question was, which would you think was the most insightful thing that you did?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, because I think I always feel that the more methodologies that you can blend together, the more perspectives you have on a particular research question. So I think what was great about this was the kind of composite range of different ways of looking at the same research questions that we had here, so kind of pulling it all together. And I think that's sort of, it is a sort of a holistic outcome that makes the insight stronger. I think in terms of a favourite, I would definitely say that the Smart Home Day was the favourite, because it's so hard to get consumers to think about future needs. I mean, they just can't do that, no matter what techniques you use. So to put them in an environment that experientially takes them into the future meant that they were able to talk about things they didn't even know they were possible. So for me, that was probably the favourite technique.
Yeah, I mean, that was very immersive, wasn't it, for the respondents?
Yeah, yes, it was. It was.
Much
They
more so
loved
than you
it.
get with anything else.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and exciting. You know, it really got them thinking. In the film, there's you know, they talk about all the pieces of technology that really excite them. So there are kind of hobs where you can move the pan across the surface, and the hob never feels hot. You know, things like that were just kind of blew people's minds, and that was lovely. You know, to sort of they started to think about the role of safety in the kitchen and their needs and where that would take them in the future, and so yeah, it was great.
Okay, I've got one final quick question for John, which was in terms of your consumers, the people who you used, or I suppose you used generally, but the people who appeared in your video. Again, this is Keith. You were asking, did you screen for creative or articulate consumers, or were they just?
No, in fact, well, they were recruited by Discovery Research. But one of the big advantages of this is you don't have to screen for creative or expressive, verbally expressive consumers, because they express themselves non-verbally. So I mean that's one of the strengths about it. If we're talking about non-verbal expressiveness, then let's go back to this, my bugbear about the automated computerized facial coding. You learn about the style of different respondents. So a man, for example, you know, might be delighted if he just kind of raises an eyebrow and there's a slight smile on his face, whereas someone else, possibly a woman, looks delighted the whole time. So you've got to build that in, you know, you factor that in. So yeah, I'm afraid it sounds a bit Big Brother-ish, but when you're doing, incidentally, many more qualitative researchers ought to be picking up non-verbal communication. But when you're doing non-verbal communication, people can't lie, you know. It's not like you lie to me, you can detect lying, because it doesn't work for that. But actually, your non-conscious brain responds so quickly, you can't fake it. You can't tell people you're really interested in something when you can see that you're not.
It would be interesting to blend your facial coding with the smart house that Amanda had.
It would.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, I just want to thank Dan, who's not with us, Dan, John, Stuart, and Amanda, for first of all for submitting their presentations to us and taking the risk, as it were, to spend some time putting forward a presentation for the award, but and some great presentations there. Thank you, and thanks to Critical Research for sponsoring us. So the ICG will be hosting the Independence Day Award in 2017, and full details will be available shortly. So please consider making a submission. You now know the standard that you're going to need to reach.